Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. Today is a special day. I've got a great friend named Randall that's joining us. He's a betrayed male spouse who actually is still married and has found a way to stay married. I'm overjoyed that he's come in to just spend a few minutes with us and share some of his stories. So, Randall, thank you so much for coming in, brother.
You're welcome, Sam. How's it going?
Well, it's going great now that you're here. So for the viewing and listening audience, why don't you take us down just a little bit, a journey of your story and what's gone on?
Been married for a while, over a decade, and about, let me see, I think it was about 4 years ago, I found out that my wife had an affair. And, I guess the typical madness kind of hit the fan
Yeah.
and just trying to figure out what's up and what's down and what's
Yeah.
happening and all of that stuff. Just it's hard to really describe what to do or where to go or anything like that. But you said it right. I figured out a way, some way. It was one of those kind of. It was a partial disclosure at first, and we found some help, but it wasn't infidelity specific help. And it I don't think I would really call it very helpful. It was what it was, but it wasn't the right
Yeah.
help that we needed. And then some time passed, certainly over a year. It was probably more than that. My wife, something kind of happened with her. I'm still not really sure what happened, but she just kind of came to me one day and said, I don't want to live the way I've been living anymore. And um, we need to find some specific help for what we've been through. And we did. And that led to full disclosure of some truths that were much bigger than what was disclosed the first time.
And it's unfortunate that that happens all the time. There's so much shame associated with the betrayed male and obviously with the betrayed female.
Sure.
I love to have visitors come in like you who, we've got a black screen and just protecting your safety for, life and workplace. But it's tough to share your story. And so it's bad enough that you're a betrayed male, but then you had to have a multiple disclosure. And so was there more after the second disclosure, or was the second disclosure everything?
The second disclosure was everything. It was it was not it was not ideal the way it all
Yeah.
shook out. I doubt it ever is, honestly, but it all shook out, and I guess I kind of got to the point very quickly after the second disclosure that there were probably other truths that I decided weren't, whether I knew them or not, it wasn't going to change anything for me or my situation. I knew enough to make decisions that I needed to make at that time.
Man, and
Um,
it's such a beautiful statement, dude. It's so hard for a betrayed male or female to get to the point where they said they get to the point where they say I know enough. How did you get there? Because I think so many betrayeds can learn from you, because there's so many people that can keep ruminating and keep asking questions and more details and more details. So how did you get to the point where you said, I know enough?
I think it was a matter of just really being self-reflective, because I certainly did do all of the things you said. And, years out, there are days I still ruminate. Absolutely. Um, there are days I catch myself in those cyclical thoughts. I still have bad dreams. I think I came to the realization that I could either hold on to it and just try to squeeze that lemon for every drop that I could get. But I wasn't really sure I wanted to make lemonade with what was coming out of there. So I just kind of decided that I'm going to, at this point, I know enough to move forward for myself, but the more I know is probably just going to hurt me. Not that the information was going to hurt me any worse than the information that I had, but that it wouldn't serve me.
Right.
And I think that's what I'm trying to say is that I got to the point that it was like, this is about me at this point. This is about my survival. This is about, things
Yeah.
that I can't worry about this other person anymore and what they did or didn't do. I can't fix any of it. I can't change any of it.
Yeah. It's about getting your life back and your brain back, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
And how long ago was disclosure? So that I know a lot of men are going to say, man, how long has it been? Right. Like, how far out is this guy?
Um, I believe full disclosure would have been 3 years ago this summer.
Okay.
My our therapist was very clear with the timeline that, okay, full disclosure doesn't necessarily mark the beginning. I had to go start doing my own work on myself. My wife had to go start doing her own work on herself before we could even get to a place where, first of all, if we decided we wanted to stay married, where we could get to a place where we could come back and work on the marriage. So it's not a short road. It's not an easy
Yeah.
road.
No, absolutely, man. Without a shadow of a doubt. So oftentimes I have betrayed males come in. It's been a joy because, as you know, being a betrayed male, you feel like you're out on an island and you just feel like very few people can relate. And then you go online looking and it's, when he cheats and when he does this, right? And how does she, the betrayed, heal? So how was it for you and obviously you're still married, you're still working through it and have been able to see the marriage find a great point of healing. But what was it like for you just being a betrayed male?
It was awful. I know that's you say you're on an island. I would agree with that, but the island's on fire and there's no water. I mean, I don't even know you could go deeper and deeper with the metaphor. It was the
Right.
most isolating, horrific experience that I've certainly ever been through. And I feel for anybody else who's gone through it or who's going through it, it is truly awful.
No, you're exactly right. You're on an island, but the island's on fire and all there is more gas. There's no water in
Yeah.
sight. There's no fire
Right.
extinguishers.
Right.
And you don't have
Right.
any clothes on. And you have, I mean, you can go
Yep.
on down the list. I know that it's impossible. But for guys that are kind of listening, going, I don't know how to do this. What worked for you? What were some of the things that helped you get your brain back, get your life back, and really start to live again?
Yeah. Yeah. To continue the metaphor, learn how to swim, right? You got to learn how to swim off that island. It was a matter of what do I want to do? How do I want to show up for myself? How do I want to show up for my kids? Eventually, how do I want to show up for my marriage? Because I was not without, you know, sin either. And by that, I mean, I wasn't the perfect husband. I didn't step out on the relationship or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. But there were things about myself that I knew I wanted to change too. And it kind of got to a point where I think my body started to talk to me before my mind did. Because at
Mm,
first it wasn't necessarily like I need to get my mind right. It was like, okay, I've lost 40 pounds. I am
yeah.
physically unhealthy. It's hard to get out of bed. It's hard to go to work. I have these kids who I'm responsible for. I've got to figure out a way to physically keep going. So it was, I started going to the gym every day. Um, I got into therapy actively. There were some weeks where I was going 2 and 3 days a week. I don't necessarily recommend that for everyone. It gets expensive, and your therapist or therapists, in my case, may not be very happy with you. But it was really just about getting, I knew I had to do something. And I
Yeah.
also, you touched on something earlier with the isolation. Everything that I read said, reach out to your friends, reach out to family, don't be an island. That is, I see, I see the wisdom in that advice. I really do. In my case, it was difficult, I'm sure, because yes, we're men, and shame is a huge part of it. I'm not saying it's not for females, but it is. That's the topic we're talking about today. Um, we as guys don't necessarily talk about our feelings at all with other guys, let alone stuff that's um, this messy. But I also found myself doing just that. And I guess what I would say is what I learned from that was that I had to be really careful because I was fairly careful with who I spoke to about what was going on. But even with those people who I was careful with, I did not necessarily get great advice or support.
Yeah.
And I was very private. This is not something I enjoy talking about. It's not something, because I still wanted to protect my wife and protect my children. This is not anybody else's business. Nobody else gets to say, about our marriage and my decision and that kind of thing. So I guess that's what I would say is be careful who you talk to. Um, know that whoever you're going to is going to come at you from a place of love and probably deep protection. Um, but the advice that they give you may not line up with who you necessarily want to show up to be. And I guess the last part of my question, and then I'll be quiet for a second, is I got really lucky with one of my therapists, and he asked me a question along the lines of, what are your internal values? And I think I knew what they were, but I had never voiced them before. And so, like, putting words to those, writing them down, did a couple of things. It just got me really clear on what those were so that I could kind of hold myself accountable to them as I continued down that road.
Yeah.
And it also showed me that journaling was something that was really helpful as well. That journal could always listen, and it never gave me bad advice or advice that I didn't want to hear or anything. And it let me just kind of spew my anger or my vitriol or my indignance or whatever it is. And, the page took it, and then go out in the backyard and set fire to it.
Yeah. I really believe in journaling, just like coaching or therapy, because sometimes when someone comes to see me, I know that they need to just kind of talk and
Yeah.
process.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
And it sounds like you had to do a lot of it. And I guess a question for you, you talked about some things that really worked well. Were there some things that did not work well? Were there some things that you're like, oh gosh, if you're out there listening or watching, these things did not work well for me?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I only found those things that did work well by stumbling over the things that didn't work well. The first thing that comes to mind is focusing on your spouse. The more I wanted to know where she was, what she was doing, even after full disclosure, when, we were in, just the more I focused on her, the worse I got in myself, the more the more I trapped myself on that island. Um, it was probably the worst thing that I could have done for moving myself forward. Um, in retrospect, I try to give myself compassion that I did the best that I could, but inevitably I come away from it feeling like I could have done better for my kids.
Hmm.
So, and by that, I mean just being more present because, it's difficult anytime you've got kids because you've got life. But when something this big hits, it's very, very difficult. It was very, very difficult for me to continue to be present
Yeah.
with my kids. So I didn't do a good job of finding time to focus on whatever those feelings were and whatever processing, whatever that stuff was, so that I could be more present with my kids. I didn't know how to put my oxygen mask on first.
Mm.
So I guess before I did all of those things that I say worked, I did probably the opposite, and um and
Yeah.
learned from it. I
So
don't I
when
don't no, go
when
ahead. Go
you
ahead.
when you say put on your oxygen mask first, does that mean that you were like, look, yeah, she has to do her work, but that doesn't void out the fact that I have to do my work regardless?
Yes, absolutely. It was because you have the work that I found that I had to do was, I had several different pieces to it. You have the work of the trauma from the infidelity. You have the work of mourning the death of your marriage, because that's exactly what it was for me, and it should have been. That was not a marriage that I wanted to continue. I had to figure out who I wanted to be in the new marriage, whether it was going to be with my wife or with somebody else. I had to figure out, it was basically, I don't know when or who kind of led me there, but I figured out at some point that I'm probably more broken down than I've ever been.
Yeah,
And that can be an opportunity to rebuild things the way I want them to be rebuilt
that's
for
wonderful.
myself.
It's a beautiful picture, and it's not just making, lemonade out of lemons, but it's deciding to not remain a victim and choosing to actually swim off the island or put on the oxygen mask or take ownership. And I love that. And it's palpable to hear your decision to say, I'm going to own this and do the work that I need to do. So for those that it's very often people will message me and say, I just don't believe a marriage can work. I don't believe a marriage will be able to be healed. That's not
Mm-hmm.
the case with you. It's not perfect. No marriage is perfect. Even
Right.
marriages that haven't been affected by infidelity and addiction are not perfect. But for
Exactly.
those that are watching and listening, especially men that are like, man, can my wife get it, or can my husband actually get it? What is the marriage like right now?
I would say it's in its infancy. It is definitely, it is two human beings who are inherently imperfect, who have their own histories and their own lives and their own goals and objectives, who are trying to figure out how to make a life.
Yeah.
Infidelity aside, that's extraordinarily difficult to do.
Right. Absolutely.
But
But
but it's
is it fulfilling?
yes, yes, it is fulfilling. It is fulfilling. It is hopeful. It is joyful. Um, it is hopeful. There are days where it's hard. There are
Yeah.
days when it hurts. There are days, um, but it gets better. It gets better. It will get better. It is infinitely better than it was 3 years ago, 2 years ago, a year ago, 6 months ago. Time is the greatest healer. I don't believe that all marriages should survive it. But if you've got two people who want to do it,
Yeah.
then there's no reason why it can't. But it takes two.
You're exactly right. And I think there's so many people that will say, yeah, Randall, you're lucky. You had a wife that was willing to do the work. Well, you're
Yes, I
not
am.
lucky. You still had to be betrayed. It's not necessarily that you're lucky
Well,
at all,
that's
but that,
that's true too.
you're navigating through life altering pain and trauma. And what about what made your wife do the work? So many people would want to know what made her be willing to do the work.
That's a great question. I believe that there was something that drove her to act in that way that had nothing to do with me. I truly
Hmm.
believe that. I know that to be true. And I would be willing to bet that's the case for 99% of people out there, that whatever your spouse is or isn't doing, it has nothing to do with you. It has something to do with them and what's inside them or an experience that they've been through. And I don't know exactly what it was. And I didn't spend a lot of time trying to figure out what it was, but I think I think she just came to a place where she decided that's not the person she wanted to be anymore.
Yeah.
And that can
Go
be
ahead.
difficult. That can be difficult because that had nothing to do with me. You know, that's completely out of my control. But I really believe that in that respect, I got lucky. That she decided that she wanted to live a different way.
And I think it's a testimony to the fact that she had to want to do it. And there's so many betrayeds out there who would say, I don't know if my partner wants to.
And I remember feeling that and worrying, well, what do I do? How can I make my partner want it? And I think I remember, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if there is an answer, but I remember what I did in response to thinking that and worrying about that. And it was focusing on myself. I don't know if it's going to make them want it or not, but I know that in focusing on myself, I saw a change in my partner.
And I'm going to do something. I'm going to bullet point you with a couple of questions and you can give me quick answers. I already answered you one. Is it fulfilling? And you gave me the answer. Is it really joyful?
Yes.
Is it really a marriage that you enjoy?
Yes.
Do you feel good about yourself and about the marriage, considering all that you guys have been through?
Yes.
Has this caused you, and this is a tough one, and I want you to expand on it.
Okay.
But has it caused you to respect yourself more or less at what you have been willing to process through, forgive, and overcome?
That is a good question. It was a process. Where I am now, it has caused me to respect myself more. But I have to be honest with the fact that I had to walk through that question and really, really figure out where my dignity was and where my self-respect was. And once I got through that kind of analysis, I know that I know the answer is better. And I know the answer is yes. It's, that's a hard one.
It is. It really is. All of this is hard. And a great therapist that's a friend of mine, you know, she said this a decade or so ago, is choose your hard. Divorce is hard. Trying to save your marriage is hard. It's all hard. There is no easy. You choose your hard. But I just love, you know, Randall, I love the fact that you have been incredibly just courageous. I tell every betrayed male or female, it's going to take a lot of things, but one thing it's going to absolutely take is courage to get your life back, to get your brain back, because your brain just gets captivated by ruminations. But I think there's so much to gather and learn from what you've just said. I think it's so incredibly brave and courageous for you to have been willing to walk through such a dark hallway. My last question for you. You know, for me, it was 20 plus years ago. I found myself in a field, lost, dark. And I remember I made a commitment, because I come from faith. I made a commitment to God. I made a commitment to myself that if I could just get out of this, that I would do everything in my power to help people heal. And I got on the phone with my mentor, and he just talked me off the ledge. If you had a chance to talk to myself or somebody else in a field, in a car, in a room, just trying to make sense out of this, trying to gather the strength to go one more day,
Yeah.
what would you say to them? What would you say to yourself if you had to do it all over again?
Yeah. I've been in that field and I know how dark it is. And I'm sorry you're there. Walking out is not going to be easy, but you can do it because you're strong, because you're unique, and you're not alone. It doesn't matter if you know the people who are there with you. We're there with you. And there are people out there like Sam and others who speak the language that you speak, that only you speak, and you will be okay.
I love it. There's a quote that says, sit with the warriors, their conversation is different. And I was talking to somebody this morning, a client, and I said, you can hang with the seagulls and seagulls just crap all over everybody. Or you can hang with the eagles because the eagles talk different, they fly different, their language, their conversation is different. And when we're going through this level of trauma, we've got to find the people that are there to care for us. And so, Randall, I'm just so thankful that you came in. I know everyone listening and watching will attest to the fact that there's such bravery and courage in your voice and just what you've been through. I say it this way, man, when you meet somebody who's been through it, they get it, you get it. They listen and they go, yeah, that dude has been through it. He gets it. And so, man, you get it. I hope that this has been great for you. My hope is that you love this and that you'll come back because you have so much more to share. I'd love for you to come in. I'm going to have to bribe you or somehow get you back in one way or another. But for those of you that are watching and listening, I hope Randall has encouraged you. I hope he's given you insight to get through today, this month, and this year. If I can help at all, you can reach me at samshealingpodcast@gmail.com. You can leave a comment here. I'd love for you to subscribe, and we will see you next time on the podcast.